there will never be a technology where you type 8 words and your whole job is done. That's not ever going to be a thing. So I think that this is not a deep topic, but it's an observation. And to take it one step further, yes, we all need, prompting is kind of a skill. Practice, it's going to take you tens of hours to learn any skill. And really, Chris, if you agree, I mean, aren't a lot of the AI startups, and they're launching 1,000 a month.
Yep.
Partly just about prompt assistant. Like it's like a layer on top of ChatGPT that like gives you, like makes you more efficient at using it, because people, even the most simple UX where you just type English, like English is the hot new programming language. Even that, we still need help, and startups are adding a layer to help people prompt. Is that what's happening?
Well, like think about what we've always done, even with like search. Like for some reason, we never type full sentences into a search bar. Like, you know what I mean? Like plumber near me. It's like the most,
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's like the most caveman way of looking for anything ever. Right?
Yeah, it is. Now that you mention it.
And then you go to AI and you're like, no, you can just talk to it. And they want to be like, caveman near me. You know what I mean? And AI is just like, are you, you know what I mean? What am I going to do with that? On today's show, we have none other than Mr. Robert Rose. Robert is the CEO and strategy officer for the Content Advisory, and as such is responsible for organization strategic advisory, education, and consulting services. For more than 25 years, Robert has been involved in helping organizations understand how the strategic use of digital content drives better customer experiences. As one of the world's most recognized experts in content strategy, digital media, and marketing, Robert innovates creative and technical strategies for a wide variety of clientele. He's advised large enterprises such as Salesforce, Hilton, CVS Health, Facebook, LinkedIn, KPMG, Staples, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Internet, give a warm welcome to Mr. Robert Rose.
Robert Rose, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I am so very happy to be here. I've been a longtime fan, longtime listener, first time guest, I guess you would say. But yeah, all good. I am so glad to be here.
You're a dream guest, and we're happy to have you. Everyone, I think, already is familiar with you and knows your voice. If not, your broader body of work and all the content you do. So thrilled to have you. This will be a great conversation.
It should be fun.
Yeah, so the theme of the show is just that we all come with one topic. You basically book in the topic. You announce the topic, why it's of value to you, and then we chime in, and then you kind of get the opportunity to close on that topic. All right. So why don't Robert? Would you want to start?
Sure, I can absolutely start.
All right.
So my topic is, I guess the way to put a headline to it would be something around the idea of truth, trust, and where we are in the way of creating a point of view around our marketing. I've started to call it vision-led marketing or something like that. And we're seeing it as a pronounced trend in B2B for sure. And somewhat to a lesser extent, I would say, in B2C. But the idea is this, which is, okay, we've all known the sort of misinformation, lack of trust, the disappearance of truth across social media. And now we're seeing it across artificial intelligence, right? Where artificial intelligence is, generative AI is now creating content, sometimes just making stuff up, and otherwise not getting the facts straight, or just making up stuff because it's dutifully trying to comply with some prompt and get it there. And what we're seeing is sort of that combination of sort of the search for truth and creating trust with our potential consumers, our audiences, I might call them, and this idea of, so content marketing is this well-aged wine, and basically what we see here is everybody got that memo. And the memo is, how to do this, how to do that, how can you actually teach your customers to do something? And what we see, and Gartner's been doing some remarkable research on this as well, which is what buyers are looking for is a point of view that they can trust, a place that they can live from value and content, not necessarily only visit when they have a purchase need. So we can see this happening in best practices with a lot of the companies and clients that we work with, where instead of focusing only on that purchase decision or that thought leadership at that purchase moment, they're building these content ecosystems that actually talk about the world or meet the audience where they need to be in that particular moment, even outside their product or brand or service or those kinds of things. And so it's a fascinating trend that we're seeing, and especially if you put the context to it of AI, social media, misinformation, and all those kinds of things, that the real opportunity there is to how do we start to differentiate in a world where that trust is going to be harder and harder and harder to get.
Robert, thank you. You're an example of that message in action, because as usual, you're giving us a perspective and a way to think about things. You and I talked about this last time we hung out. We had a dinner and a cocktail, and we're going to do that again. But at that time, I told you, yes, I know that my content really doesn't reach a senior audience. It's mostly practical how-to stuff. It's very tactical things, best practices, step by step, and that content programs that offer people a way to think about things are more likely to reach and connect with and be memorable for a more senior audience. I think you were just being generous by saying, yeah, Andy, but it's great. You reach the practitioner. Is what you're saying especially true or for brands that are trying to connect with sort of the C-suite, or is this for everybody?
I think it's for everybody. The wider point, or the broader sort of idea here, is this idea of creating these content ecosystems, if you will, where your customer is not only coming there as a resource. We're good at building resource centers, right? And this is B2C or B2B, right? We build these resource centers, and there's a video on how to do this, or there's a learning podcast for how to do that, or there's a webinar on how to do this, and it's all around typically our product or service, or how to use our product or service better, or why it's so amazing that you should try this product or service. And instead, what we're starting to see now are companies develop entire ecosystems of content where it's not only about the industry, or it's not only about our point of view of the world, but it might literally be, hey, we're going to do a class on our point of view of sustainability for the planet, or we're going to do a class about a wonderful example of this. We call these typically conscious experiences. SAP did a brilliant job at this, right? During COVID, they changed the entire editorial strategy of one of their e-commerce blog, because guess what? Nobody wanted to talk about e-commerce during COVID.
Right.
And so they changed the entire editorial strategy to be around what you need to do to reopen your business during a pandemic and how to best practices. And they partnered with Johns Hopkins University and got wonderful points of view around the medical and the healthcare and the business aspects of doing all of that kind of work that had nothing to do with e-commerce. And what they lost in SEO, what they lost in sort of organic traffic, because they were quite honestly not talking about the things that they'd been talking about for so long, was they more than gained up with audience loyalty. In other words, people who came back. So they doubled their traffic. They doubled their engagement.
Wow.
And by the way, kept the lead generation engine going. But it was entirely because they changed the editorial to be a point of view about the world. Like, this is what we think about the world.
Yep.
And changing to meet the audience where they are, rather than sort of saying, hey, if you're ever in this place, you should come visit this, you should come visit this blog. So it's that not getting wrapped around the axle of our brand or our product or our service with regard to content, but rather building that broader value for an audience and truly living up to the idea of being a media company.
That's thought leadership. This was it's a perspective. And so I had a very brief conversation in a Q&A with Seth Godin once, who said several things that I thought of a minute ago while you were speaking. One is that part of the job of content is to start a conversation. people are more likely to have a conversation about the state of the world than a conversation about step-by-step best practices for e-commerce. But also, he said that thought leadership is it's about taking a stand, and that it causes tension, and you can be certain that someone will disagree, almost as if that's the criteria for the definition. Does it create tension? Can someone disagree with it? You can't really disagree with the 8-step process for setting up GA4. That's just how to do it.
That's exactly right.
But you can disagree with, whether, AI is dangerous, or, what is the pandemic's impact on commercial real estate. There's a million topics that are interesting to people that go beyond, that offer perspective and point of view, not just best practices and practical resource, your resource center.
Sure. Or is GA4 going to actually upend the world of analytics, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is your brand's point of view on that particular topic? I 100% agree, and it gets to this idea of saying, I like what Seth said. The way we typically say it is in order to be right for someone, you have to be willing to be wrong for someone else, and that's a critical component. But in addition, it's also this idea of taking a wider stance on your, we call it a point of view architecture,
mm-hmm.
right? Where you build a point of view that is consistent with your company's point of view about the world. What do we believe about the world? And regardless of where we play, our product or service plays in that world, we were working with another company, a professional services company that, of course they do cloud computing, and they do servers, and they do installations of SAP, they do big IT consulting things. And one of the things that really got them attention and a lot of awareness and a lot more engagement with their brand was coming out with what they thought the benefit of cloud computing and infrastructures were, and wrote about that. Didn't matter if, the benefit was believing in the thing, not necessarily that we could deliver you the thing. And so it's really taking that, where can we tell a story that tension-filled, provocative, whatever it happens to be, but how do you take that thing and make it beneficial for everyone? Look, the quintessential example of this is HubSpot, right? HubSpot did this in spades when they launched inbound marketing, right? Inbound marketing wasn't a thing. It just wasn't a thing in 2007. And they made it a thing, and they made it beneficial. Whether you used HubSpot or not, the practice of inbound marketing became a thing. And then you went, oh, well, who's the one who has this amazing it's this company that has this amazing point of view about this new process, which, let's be honest, is marketing automation at its core. Mm-hmm. But it's really, they made it a thing, and they made a point of view about the world and what they believed about it. And it just so happened that they were the ones who brought it to you.
I think one of the things that we're a HubSpot Platinum partner, and so I have so many HubSpot stories. It's unbelievable. If you ever get a chance, did you guys ever read the book Disrupted or Disrupt?
I did not.
Yes, I did. I did.
Yeah, the guy who wrote Disrupt also wrote for Silicon Valley, the TV show, and some of his stories are just they're hilarious. I also think it's very easy for one guy in a company to pick apart, this massive ship and just, but that's a story for another time. I wanted to circle back.
That book is a point of view. Yeah, it's kind of another example. I've had when I've talked to people, sometimes I try to help them, nudge them toward this idea of thought leadership by challenging them to answer some questions. What do you believe about the future that most people don't agree with? What questions in your industry are people afraid to answer? These are things, or what Ryan Law from Animals used to say is that, do you have any counter-narrative opinions? What a powerful concept, right? Just think about that for a second. I have some that are so provocative that we'd get in a fight if I even said them. Ask me later. But those counter-narrative opinions, it's triggering. It's powerful. There's you can't hear them without thinking immediately of your own perspective.
Yeah, you used to say this thing, Andy. It was like, what are the things that seem like widely accepted things in your industry, but there's no data to support it? Like bounce rates have to be this. Well, who made that rule up? You know what I mean? It's just like, you know what I mean? It's funny, but if you're gonna draw a line in the sand, and like I think you even had a blog about like, I went and looked at every client I had and looked at their bounce rates. And this is what the data supported argument behind this common theme of, we say it all the time to the tip of our tongue. And it's like, we just heard it from somebody else, you know?
Find a missing stat, produce research that supports the frequently, there are frequently asserted but rarely supported things in every category. If you find one of those and make it, that can be very powerful.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because it's the one thing that we tell clients all the time around thought leadership is, don't look for the frequently asked questions, look for the rarely given answers.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a difference between search and social. If search is about meeting expectations, social is about being unexpected. They're sort of opposite channels. Thought leadership can work great in social media because it's sort of like, interesting.
Right, because the content finds you, right? The content finds you, and it's. And I was just it's the idea that, going back to your Seth Godin comment, thought leadership is inherently, by definition, even in the name, it's leading thought, right? So inherently, if you're leading thought, you're talking about things that people aren't searching for.
Exactly. It's that people don't search for counter-narrative opinions.
Right. Exactly.
What is the query? There's no keyword opportunity. It's not a thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate that perspective. And I think that we can never stop making this point about the key to having differentiated content. Chris and I are both, deep immersed in AI, so we're thinking about this a lot as well, just from that perspective. But Robert, again, your wisdom, deeply appreciated.
Absolutely, 100%.
Very cool. All right, moving on. Andy, do you want to go next?
Well, I started to segue into AI. I'll share an observation. I'm teaching classes. Okay. I teach at Northwestern. I teach master's level students things like content strategy and influencer marketing. Weird, fun, challenging. It's partly for me like presentation camp. I'm doing tens of hours of speaking and polishing messages and slides. But one thing I've noticed after adding AI to my courses, AI is required. I'm not one of the higher ed people who are afraid of it. I'm one of the higher ed people who worry more that my students won't use it because I want them to be prepared for the economy.
Yeah.
And I just had this realization, like, even if you give them access and say, not only can you use it, you're supposed to use it, please use it, people are actually a little bit lazy about how they're using even AI. I think that it requires training. I think lazy prompting is a problem in that people's expectations are strange. They think they're going to put in 8 words and that it will do their whole job for them. That's never going to, there will never be a technology where you type 8 words and your whole job is done. That's not ever going to be a thing. So I think that this is not a deep topic, but it's an observation. And to take it one step further, yes, we all need, prompting is kind of a skill. Practice, it's going to take you tens of hours to learn any skill. And really, Chris, if you agree, aren't a lot of the AI startups, and they're launching 1,000 a month, partly just about prompt assistant? Like, it's like a layer on top of ChatGPT that like gives you, like, makes you more efficient at using it, because people, even the most simple UX where you just type English, like English is the hot new programming language, even that, we still need help, and startups are adding a layer to help people prompt. Is that what's happening?
Well, like, think about what we've always done, even with like search. Like, for some reason, we never type full sentences into a search bar. Like, you know what I mean? Like, plumber, near me. It's like the most,
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's like the most caveman way of looking for anything ever, right?
Yeah, it is. Now that you mention it.
And then you go to AI and you're like, no, you can just talk to it. And they want to be like, caveman near me. You know what I mean? And AI is just like, are you know what I mean? What am I going to do with that? I do think they get lazy prompting. And then I also think that when they don't get the first answer, they don't realize it's contextual, because search also was never contextual. Like, I have Alexa in our house, right? And I'm using ChatGPT all the time, and I can't stand, I'll come home and I'll just ask it a question, and then I'll ask it a follow-up question, and it forgets the context. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot that you're not contextual. And I know it sounds, when I think of the students that you have, Andy, I really believe that they haven't switched the gear to do that. And I even find my second prompt didn't even need to give as much context to start over again. I just can't help my monkey brain from doing that. You know what I mean?
Well, a simple example and an aha moment for one student from a past class. Enters a prompt and says, "This doesn't feel right. AI's writing super long words." And I say, "Tell it to write shorter words."
Yeah.
Seconds later, she looks up from her laptop and says, "Aha, that's how it works. It's an intelligence.
Right.
Use it like any person. People say it's like an intern. Okay, treat it like an intern. What intern can you give one instruction to and expect to get amazing results? That intern does not exist." So it was.
It's a funny thing because I think part of the challenge there, and this is a challenge for us all, is that we're bringing sort of our old paradigms to bear here. I mean, Chris, just to your point about the way that we use search, we never sort of got over that, right?
Yeah.
And with prompting, unfortunately, the way that ChatGPT and others, Bard, all of the generative AI sort of technologies have been presented is give it a prompt to create something and it will create it for you. And instead, the answer is actually in the name itself, right? In other words, if you chat with ChatGPT, if you converse with it, it will give you much better results than if you just ask it to create something for you. And I have gotten so much more value out of both Bard and ChatGPT by saying, "Hey, listen, in a minute, I'm going to give you some stuff, and I want you to think about it, and I want you to give me, some questions that you might ask me to get a better result." And then, and then it says, "Okay, great. What are you going to? I'm ready for you. Let me here's some questions." And then, okay, I'm going to answer these questions this way. I'm going to answer these questions that way. What do you think about all this? Right? So you're literally you're talking with the technology, not necessarily just saying, "Create me a Mona Lisa," and expecting it to create you a Mona Lisa. It's actually working with it like you would a virtual assistant and getting that thing back. And that's just not a paradigm we're used to doing yet.
But it is one step farther. And what I mean by, let me I want to make sure I say this right. When I have a virtual assistant, I actually, it's kind of funny. How I do a bunch of random stuff, Andy, you're like, where do you pick up this stuff? I have an assistant in the Philippines that has my Google Calendar, and I mark the times that I drive, and she will text me and say, "Hey, do you want me to jump on?" And while I drive, we work while I drive because I'm in the car like 40 hours a week. So it's like a virtual assistant, but only while I'm driving. Anyhow, the way I talk to her is very different than the way that I talk to everybody else. But at no point in time could I go to her and say, "By the way, I need you to read everything I've ever written."
Right.
And I, at no point in time, if I say, "Read all my blogs," and then talk like me. You know what I mean? And so one of the things and this is going to kind of come back to your first question, Robert, about how do you build trust? I believe that so much of this is built in what we call AI chat priming. That so many people, as soon as they log on, they're so anxious to get the car moving that they dive right in. What I recommend is that you have a document of the critical things that you say all the time, the idioms, just even the things that you would say, and that you're famous for saying, and you plug that in prior to ever starting. And then what you ask it to do is reference the way you speak, the statistics that you do. It's going to cut down on hallucinations, and it's also going to sound like you and your brand. Now, here's the problem: is that ChatGPT 4 only let you do that at 500 words at a time.
Right.
But yesterday, Claude, so this is just a little AI nerdery here. Microsoft double dipped. So Microsoft invested heavily in OpenAI, and then people left OpenAI and they started Anthropic. And then Microsoft gave, almost $1 billion or more to Anthropic too. Anthropic says they'll be 10 times smarter than GPT-4. So they launched Claude 2 yesterday. It's got higher math scores and it's got higher English scores, and it has 100,000 tokens, which means you could literally upload a Harry Potter book. So right from the jump, if you have Andy's book, you could say, use this as the context of the way I communicate, the way I always use data, the way that I always make strong opinions, and therefore, hopefully, you're going to build trust because it's you're talking consistently the way you've always done. I'm hoping. I don't know, but that's I think in the chat priming is the future of how do you still stay human even though you're using a tool. Because it
Super
sounds
interesting.
Yeah.
Here's a hot take. If you're talking to someone and they're going to produce anything on your behalf, maybe you have an agency. Status quo is send us your brand guidelines so that we know how to produce content that sounds like you.
Yep.
Right.
Starting really to now, I'd say today, brand guidelines should actually be a series of prompts that the agency can use to teach the AI to produce, to validate or check or maybe produce some simple social post or something in that voice. It's actually weird now, suddenly, that there's a brand guideline for things like tone and voice, because that absolutely should be something done in generative AI. So, but then how do you collaborate? Do you have like a shared Google, and this is a legit question, do you have just a shared Google Doc where you have like a bunch of training prompts and anyone who wants to produce content in your in that voice goes and has to prime it with 6 prompts before getting or do you just all pay for Jasper? I mean, what's going to happen? Where do we go?
Yeah. Well, I think that your last bit there is a critical piece, because some of the solutions that are out there now, some of the paid solutions, the business oriented, call them enterprise if you like, but they're basically business oriented tools, are doing this, right?
Yep.
Even to the point of, we've been spending a lot of time reviewing the various vendors out there because we help our clients select those kinds of tools. And so the tools that are out there now, and it's just the first one coming to mind. So it's not an endorsement or anything, but Writer is a great example of that, right? Where they give you the tools exactly like what you're talking about to say, here are the prompts to build a brand guideline or a tonal guideline or, a playbook that your custom learning model that you get as part of being a subscriber of this product can help, that will become the guideline. And by the way, you can have multiples, right? You can have, you can have it for different brands, different products, et cetera, and you can use those things to guide you. And another one that we looked at, which I think, just going to your idea of prompts, is they're building tools to help you write better prompts. In other words, they're prompts to help you write prompts. Yeah. In other words, you say, what do you want to do? Just give me an 8-sentence or 8-word sentence of what you want to do. And they'll get, great. Here's the way you might want to prompt that. And they're using AI to help you build better prompts.
Yes. Andy and I were just talking about that before the show. Like, I imagine a world where when you used to spell something incorrectly and the red lines were under it, like you'd be able to click on it. And it's like,
yeah, exactly.
You could ask it this way, but these are 5 other ways.
I respect that, and I think if you're new to AI, maybe one of your first experiments should be, I am this job title at this kind of company doing this kind of work, and I have these kind of goals. How should I prompt you? Ask AI.
Yeah.
How should I prompt
That's
you?
right.
To help me be more productive, more efficient, more comprehensive in my content. Tell it your goals, and then ask it what prompts you should consider using.
Exactly.
It's an excellent start.
Yep.
Chat with it.
Have you ever seen?
In other words, read it for what it is. Chat with it.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. How can you help me do a better job?
Yep.
Right.
I think one of the most missed opportunities is to also ask it, what are my blind spots? What am I not asking? Because I think because one of the challenges you have is it gives you the right answer. So let's pretend like I snap my fingers and SGE is out, right? And so I type something into Google. I'm getting the chat part is at the top half of the page. Mm-hmm. What I believe one of the benefits of the old way of clicking blue links and searching yourself is they were giving you the answer, but they were also spoon feeding you things possibly, hopefully, that you weren't asking. You know what I mean? And so my only fear is that you're going to have bad prompters, but that the chat was going to give you the answer you want, but you're not going to see the blind spots and you're not going to grow beyond what you can fathom or what you can dream or what you can question.
That's a really important point, Chris. That's a really, really important point, because it is 2 different paradigms. Search and working with a generative AI are 2 different, because again, going back to our inability as humans to sort of get this right from the beginning, they should have never been called search engines. They should have been called find engines. And so because what we're really doing is it's displaying content that it has found, that sort of begin to contextually match what it thinks we want. And basically it's, we got big into this when the company that I used to be the CMO of, when we were developing our first enterprise web content management system, this is early 2000s, we were all, one of the biggest markets was developing site search, right? So site search for companies. And there's a very big difference because what people think of when you think of Google is maximizing return, just to your point, right? So everything that can maximize, but with site search or corporate search or intranet search, you actually want to do the exact opposite. You're trying to minimize what you return because you're trying to get to that exact right answer. So in a very weird way, site search or corporate, internal search is much more like ChatGPT and AI because you just want an answer. You just want the right answer, not necessarily maximizing the search to find all of the things that might match what you're looking for.
Never thought about that. That's interesting. There is a difference in the goals of a site search tool versus a search engine, but at large.
Yeah.
One thing that, but I really like this conversation about the distinction between the paradigm, the use cases, the outputs, the UX for search versus generative AI. I think when people hit that realization and say like, oh, this is good for gap analysis, give it a piece of content and say, what didn't I cover?
Exactly.
What's missing? Copy and paste build a mini AI persona, and then copy and paste in any of your web pages and say, what important information is missing from this page? It will tell you. A search engine can't do that. Search engines are information retrieval, where this is actually doing things like creating new information, like make me a new recipe for a Halloween cupcake that didn't exist yesterday. It'll do that. Invent me a new sake cocktail. It'll do that. And didn't gap analysis, right? Like that, like Chris, your point, you can actually ask it. This is another fun prompt. What do people, we'll use you, Robert. What do people hate about selecting options for content advisory services? It'll tell you what people don't enjoy about buying your services, and then you know how to address those. So those aren't queries that would give you much in a search engine, because people don't produce content on that, right? There's not a lot of URLs about these topics. But so it's generative AI makes search look like a very narrow use case.
Exactly.
I'm looking at the time, and I want to make sure that I get to my section as well.
I know. Wait, go jump in. I know what you want to talk about, and I love your topic.
Yeah, but let me talk to you about this one thing here. And this is, please forgive. I want to kind of give this preamble that I want to make sure that I understand that just because you don't run a marketing agency or you're not into marketing all the time does not mean that you're not a great marketer. Because I've met people in their basement that, in my opinion, are just rock stars. Like they're literally like they're running their business out of their basement, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you just have that natural head and heart for marketing. But so much of what we've always done is based around search, right? And with search, long tail keywords. You were always looking for content, right, that would rank, but has the least amount of competition. Now let's pretend, right, that through AI and synthetic proliferation, that gap shrinks down, right? We are really going to be in a spot where the best marketer wins, not just the person that found blue ocean opportunities. And so what's very interesting about having a marketing team is that when I'm hiring people, like I'm always trying to look at what I would call their marketing IQ, because I felt like there was so much open land that you could win for your clients. But maybe 3 years from now, there's not as much land. And so to win this, you got to have the skills and the sharpness to make better arguments, to find better data, to tell better stories, to do all those things. You know what I mean? And so I made up this thing. I'm trying to think of a blog. It's like Real Marketers Win. Like it's possible to win right now and not be that good at marketing just because of the blue ocean, the open land. But that's going to change, and then real marketers are going to have to put their money where their mouth's at. It's crazy and scary. What's up?
I can't wait to hear Robert's thoughts here.
Yeah, it feeds right into. I mean, this was a decision I made when I brought up earlier the company that I worked for. So we were a startup company, and I ultimately grew my marketing team to about 40 people, and my entire philosophy from the first person I hired to the last person I hired was, I'm hiring great communicators. I'll teach them marketing, right? I can teach anybody how to do search engine buys and triage SEO and all those kinds of things. What I can't teach them to do is to be great communicators, great, and that might be a great designer, it might be a great writer, it might be a great journalist, it might be a great editor, it might be a great, literally speech communicator, strategist. If they can pull concepts together and communicate it well, the rest I can teach them. And so it's that idea, and I got that idea honestly from literally. I think it's a urban legend, but the CEO of UPS used to say, we don't hire drivers and teach them how to be nice customer service people. We hire great customer service people and teach them how to drive. And so it's that I think it's that idea at the core of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction. Really nothing that I've ever published teaches you how to write. I sort of assume that the foundation's in place. And that's why I'm in awe of people like Anne, who actually teaches you how to write.
Yeah.
Like that's a topic too big for me.
And is annoyingly good at it, right? I mean, that's the real thing is like how annoyingly good at writing, people like Ann Hanley and Doug Kessler and some people that I just look up to in terms of their writing capabilities. Yeah.
Some other difference that, Chris, I thought of right there, it's like, is how to win right now. I think, and this is not discussed enough, but what are the actual differences in how the service is offered or what the business provides?
Yeah.
Find those and highlight those. People are like, it's hard to differentiate in marketing. Well, is the business actually differentiated somehow? Because if you just focus on that, that's your job as a marketer. It's like a Drew Davis thing, right? He talks to people about their content. It's like, well, you look at my blog, and he's like, time out. Tell me what you do. Tell me how you do it. Show me what how it's done. And he's looking for differences in the actual business to spotlight in the content. Like if you struggle to find different points of differentiation in your marketing, step back and look for true differences in the company.
That's right.
And then put that into the marketing.
I put intentional uncomfortableness in the room. And I'll get a new client and I'll put their stuff up and I'll make them read their stuff aloud. And they're like, yeah, we met together and stuff like that. And it's like, do work better. And I'm like, so cool. It's like, but name a washing machine company that doesn't say the same thing.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. It's undifferentiated.
Yeah. Well, here's another fun exercise for you to do with a client. I've done this before, which is to either their About Us page or content about their products, remove every adjective and adverb and then read it.
That's brutal.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
And it usually comes down to we do things,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Tastes like water, like this.
Yes, exactly.
Super, just completely. That's
wow.
I find that when you look at web pages, frequently the only content that's differentiated on web pages is the evidence, like the testimonials, or the logos of companies they've worked with, or their years in business. Really, the proof points are where people can differentiate more. There isn't like a more elegant way to say, it's just, it still doesn't feel different, no matter how good you are at copywriting. It's very hard. So look for those proof points again, like legit business differentiation.
Right. And you watch your, and funny enough, this circles all the way back to our point of view architecture that we talk about, which is the easiest and laziest way that we differentiate as marketing communicators is with the dichotomies, right? So it's always like it's flexible and strong, and it's it's easy and low priced, it's high value, and it's always these dichotomies that we sort of begin to use as differentiation points, and you can just see it everywhere. The headline from most websites is some sort of dichotomy of a combination of something that are on polar opposites that gives you the best of both worlds. And so find yourself doing that, and instead, as the wonderful writers from South Park taught us, put in a but. Like instead of an and, put in a but. It's amazing, but introduce tension to this story.
That's so a good grammatical form. Joe Weeb from Copy Hackers teaches some. There's one that stuck with me. She says, write a sentence that uses the grammatical form even if. And now you're objection handling. Like you can use this even if.
Yep.
Right.
No, it actually it somehow always comes out strong. There are writing tricks like that are produce consistent wins.
I love
that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let me get into my topic here because I expect it to open up a whole world of questions here. Give me 1 second. So I can think of a couple things that you say all the time, Andy. Making strong. what makes content really tick. It's making strong opinion, make data-driven arguments. All right. The hardest part about data-driven arguments is it's data-driven, at least in my opinion, when it's homegrown, it's extremely time-intensive to do. Mm-hmm. And so what Code Interpreter does, and what you will probably get already packed into Windows Copilot and Google Duet, or basically Workplace 14, is the ability to use AI to analyze data. It's almost like having a master's level analyst, master's level analyst that you can upload data sets with spreadsheets and things like that and get really, really amazing results from it. So this is Code Interpreter. It's going to be a plugin for anybody who's paying for ChatGPT. Keep in mind, it crushes tokens. So you'll find that I think you only get about 25 lookups in a session, and then you got to wait 3 hours. But so some of the things that you need to know is that you can upload Excel files, you can upload code files, you can do all kinds of things from images to everything that's possible. And so what happened was the people that got the first launch of this, they got open source data, and the open source data was crime statistics from in San Francisco. And just as an ordinary person, he uploaded it into Code Interpreter, and they found all of this information in just a couple clicks. He started talking to the data, and on their first try, the San Francisco Police Department took this study and implemented it. And they just stumbled upon it because it was trending out there. And so what you're seeing here is, crime statistics by day, trends, seasonal crime trends, police district analysis. Everything is in graphical format. Here's heat maps across the city. And it just literally came up with all of this information right from the start.
Fascinating.
It's fascinating, right? So what we did was we took a client. We do something called programmatic advertising. And what we did is we did an export of the data. And we came up with a number of different graphs that came out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you sort of the journey that I had here. All right. So we uploaded the content. I changed the name to protect the innocent. All right. It told me in the first section what it read. And I said, hey, what trends are you seeing here? All right. This is the Python script that it did. All right. It says on average, it takes about 11 impressions and 0.03 clicks for a conversion event to occur. And this indicates that a user is typically sees this 11 times before completing a conversion action.
Wow. And that's based on your own data. That's not a best practice.
Nope. And then what I started to do is I said, can you show me a visualization? And it just basically did this. This is where the campaign ended. And this is just all these reports that I was able to do. But I was able to continuously talk to the data. All right. Other questions that I asked were, visualize performance over different creatives and campaigns. And it came up with gobbledygook. So what I did is I asked, hey, clean it up, make it more, more digestible. And that's what it did. And it showed me that
nice.
My retargeting way outperformed my display in several different categories for several different products. Then what it did is I started to say, can you show it in a bar chart? And these were the ads that performed best. And you have clearly an outlier here that has a size of 320 by 50.
Chris,
then what gold. It's like crazy, right? Then I started to say, well, you know what? What are the number of conversions by hour of the day? This is extremely hard to find unless you really know what you're doing. You know what I mean? In these programs, this program doesn't connect to Google Analytics in any way. So I always had to have Google Analytics and this program running side by side, and I would hire someone to read the data and come up with this. This is just basically done in seconds. This shows the number of conversions by device type.
Click on the show work drop down there. Oh, you're in a screenshot.
I'm so sorry. I did a screenshot because I thought it would be like presentation kryptonite to watch this thing cook. You know what I mean? And so this is just an example. Guys, when I tell you this graphic that I have here took me less than 5 minutes, that's probably an exaggeration. It took me no time whatsoever.
If you pay for ChatGPT 4, bottom left corner, there's your name. Click the three dots, go to settings. In settings, there's a toggle for Code Interpreter. Then start a new chat, click on GPT-4, get the drop down, Code Interpreter will be there, click on that, find some data, upload a spreadsheet, start talking to it. it will put you in the mindset of statistical analysis, if nothing else. You can ask it to draw any kind of chart. It'll draw animated charts, bar chart races. You can output those as MP4s and drop them in. It is really just an incredible research assistant.
I'm gonna go play this weekend. This sounds fun.
Yeah. Robert,
Interesting.
I got to tell you, we were on with Paul Rotzer, and here's one of the big things that so as an agency owner, I have 26 full service clients. We have project-based work on other things and web development, but 26 clients. And there's no tool that ever gave me macro information. Meaning, oh my goodness, I found this outlier that for some reason this level of SEO keywords aren't ranking. There's nothing for me to say, hey, is this affecting all of my clients? Or is this affecting just my clients in healthcare? What about my smaller clients in healthcare? You know what I mean? And so what I was able to do, and we already have these documents already prepped, we just haven't run it, is I was able to see like, hey, what's my labor efficiency ratio for my account managers and project managers of small healthcare clients that have had a website that their website is less than 3 years old. And it's like, what question am I trying to ask? Well, I'm trying to say is when you don't have enough authority, I'm spending more my company's time and energy to get you results. But do you know how hard it is to make that argument? Yeah.
It's the new. I mean, when I was in a big consulting firm, I lived and breathed in utilization and realization spreadsheets, and this is sort of the new version of that.
Yeah, and it's so fast. It's sort of strange because when these things are generated on demand in minutes, it changes my perspective on like managing files and like, do I keep this and should I even bother saving it? And I can make it again in 2 seconds. Yeah, we become very spoiled with this tool now. It's going to change. And by the way, we are, Chris, your point, just months, maybe 1 year away from this being like a standard feature in all spreadsheet software.
Sure.
Yep. Yeah. I think what's interesting as well is that there's tools, Figma and Canva are also going to have data set orientations that you do there. So I would just take that spreadsheet, put it there, and Code Interpreter, while it was cool, those graphs, in my opinion, aren't website ready. I'd have to send that to my graphic designer to build them.
Sure, of course.
Canva and Figma are just going to be able to just do that just like that. To anybody who's, wants to do it right in Illustrator, if I'm writing a book like you guys write books, I would be doing it in Illustrator or something like that. But the same creative tools are also marrying with AI as well. It's bizarre and creative. But here's my hope, guys. And I'll say this every time. I think that it's very scary that all of this stuff is sort of encroaching on the things that made us smart, that made us have our agencies. But there's so much opportunity on floor. It's basically, we're starting on the second floor now. And you're able to do the things that we never had the time or the budget or the energy to do. But if real marketers win, we're going to be able to do things and see things and communicate things and tell stories that we could have never dreamed to do simply because we were always making the donuts of the foundational things.
Yep, exactly.
But if you're afraid of this technology, I do think you will be replaced by it. Andy, you can quote Paul here. I mean, how does he say it?
Paul said, AI will not replace X. Actually, it was any category, but we'll do marketing. AI will not replace marketers, but marketers who use AI will replace marketers who don't use AI. A Jay Baer quote I like also. We've heard from Jay here on this show. He said, "The problem is not that AI can do what marketers do. The problem is that marketers keep doing things that can be done by AI." Or your quote.
That I like better.
Yeah, I like that too. Like that better. and almost the same, and tying back to our earlier conversation here, Chris, you said once, now we have to do thought leadership, but for real this time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's crazy, right? But, it's also exciting. Well, we have about 7 minutes left. Robert, tell us just a little bit, for our audience, if they wanted to reach out and to know you, to reach out to you and know a little bit more about your services, how would they do that?
Aren't you so kind? Wow, what a lovely question that is. You can get a hold of me at our little hovel on the web, which is contentadvisory.net. I chose the .net because it is literally the dad genes of domains. it's where we have all of our services and most of our thinking as well. And of course, then on LinkedIn, I'm a big user of LinkedIn as well.
That's great. That's great. All right, Andy. Any other comments before we close?
If there's a theme that tied through here, it's authenticity and differentiation and trust that come from being a real marketer. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't also use tools to become far more productive. Just set a goal of 20% or 30% more productivity or efficiency gains from tools like these. And ideally, all this stuff just frees you up to do the fun, truly differentiated things, the strong point of view, the finding real differences in the business, exactly. To be a better marketer by using tools. We've said this a few times. If these modern technologies scare you, you're the one. If they scare you, they're for you. You're the one who should be playing with them to get value from them. There is simply no way to avoid this era. It's here.
Yeah.
I also, some of the things I really liked about what you said, Robert, were one of the questions you asked wasn't like, hey, how do we get more sales and more opportunities and more leads? The question you asked was, hey, in an age of distrust, how do you get people to trust you? And what I liked about that is that if you tell great stories, if you do great marketing and people trust you, buying is the ultimate conclusion of once you knock down that trust barrier, that's the ultimate conclusion. And so that's why I love having great guests on here, because you're already talking about, at least in my opinion, the ingredients of what makes marketing great. And so it was, I don't know whether you thought it through with the question, but that's what I heard. I was like, wow, you know what? That's a guy who knows his craft. So thank you so much for joining us.
100%. Yeah. I mean, just very quickly, I'll say we saw it this week, right? How do you get 100 million users to your platform in less than a week? You start with 2.3 billion the week before. So.
Hot take. You're a strategist at Facebook. You launched Threads. Are you happy with that adoption rate, or is
you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
Create a 2 billion business overnight. Yeah. Pretty happy.
Let's stay tuned to that channel as well.
Yeah.
And to our readers, make sure that this comes out in a timely fashion. We're talking about Threads.
Yep.
Robert, I we're literally about to do the close, but just give us a real quick update on your take on Threads, where it's at, where it's going, and then we'll close.
Yeah, I'd love that too.
I'm bullish on it now. I mean, I think it's way too early to, it's also, by the way, the time. I'm a huge football fan, and so this is the time when the blog posts come out, the way too early predictions about playoffs and the way too early predictions about 53-man rosters and all of that. And it's the way too early prediction about Threads, because it literally has been out for 2 weeks as we record this. And the idea is, yes, the uptake and the adoption rate has been phenomenal. It's been remarkable. We'll see if they can keep the engagement. And I think when we look at the fact that they've promised that they're not going to introduce monetization until early next year, you can see that that's the plan. See if it sticks.
Yeah.
I think it will. I think it will ultimately stick, and it will be a viable platform. Will it be a Twitter killer? I'm not sure. I think Twitter might pivot slightly and survive. There's a cockroach joke in there somewhere, but in any event, I'm bullish on the platform, and I think they've done a remarkable job.
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. To our listeners, please do the standard stuff: like, subscribe, click on the notification bell. It is our mission with Digital Marketing Masterclass to have the smartest minds in digital marketing join us probably about once a month. We don't have a regular schedule, but we try to pump this out as much as we can. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope you took a nugget from this, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Robert. See you soon.
Absolutely.